everybody back. If let's see if I can cross the street here. If I can get on the other side of the street, I might get another view again. Okay. All right. Oh yeah. Excuse me. It's still they don't have any control of the fire. That fire is just roaring. It still hasn't reached. It hasn't reached the front of the building, which again I'm not sure if it's the front, but the two square towers that face the front. What looks like the front where you wait in line to get through. It looks like the main entrance. The fire has not reached there yet, but it has. It's really engulfed in there.
The images, Ken, I can hear whistles blowing behind you and the police. What's happening on the ground at this moment?
Sorry about that.
What's happening on the ground? It's getting quite loud where you are.
They've got there's a lot of police, well-armed police moving us along. So
tell them we have tons of video. We just got to get to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, if I can get to Wi-Fi, I think. Well, you probably have all the video you need now, but it was.
From what I'm seeing, Ken,
I would say
this I can barely see the spire. It's the base of it looks completely engulfed at this point. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, no. It's what I call the front of the building is the two square towers. If you're looking at the front of what I consider the front, where the three doors are, those square towers don't look like they've been touched actually by the fire yet. It's behind that, and then all the way back to the big tall spire.
Ken,
that's fully engulfed.
Stay with me, and please stay safe where you are on the scene, just 150 yards away. Amazing. Ken was inside the cathedral less than 30 minutes ago. I want to bring my NBC News colleague, Ann Thompson, in. Ann, this is considered one of the most extraordinary cathedrals on Earth.
Oh, it's religiously significant, Stephanie. It's architecturally significant. And to watch this fire is just heartbreaking. That spire that you see in the middle, a spokesperson for the cathedral tells the New York Times that that is where the fire started. The Paris City Hall tells our producer, Nancy Ng, that the fire broke out shortly before 7 o'clock. 12 million tourists a year.
7 o'clock Paris
time, correct. 12 million tourists a year go through this. It is the heart of Paris, if you've ever been there. It's on a little island called Île de la Cité in the middle of the Seine, and it is a magnet for people, whether you're a believer or not. And for this to happen during Holy Week, the holiest week of the year in the Catholic Church, is just heartbreaking.
For architecture enthusiasts, not just Catholics. But last year, there was an urgent appeal from the Catholic Church to raise funds to save the cathedral. It was crumbling, or it is crumbling.
Well, and think about it. I mean, it's been around since the late 1100s. It was defaced during the French Revolution. It has a long history in this city. So it's not unusual. Here in New York, we had a campaign just a couple of years ago to restore St. Patrick's Cathedral. These cathedrals get a lot of use, and pollution as well as tourism takes its toll. But this is just extraordinary. And earlier, before this fire took off the way it did, you could see scaffolding in the same area where the fire is burning. So one of the big questions will be, did the renovations in some way spark this fire?
President Trump has tweeted just a moment ago, I share it, quote, "So horrible to watch this massive fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Perhaps flying water tankers could be used to put it out. Must act quickly." Earlier this year, just in March, another church in France, in Paris, caught fire. They were able to keep that under control, but again, major damage.
Yeah, you can see, and it's hard, at least from what we've been able to see, it's hard to see if there are even if there's any fire equipment close to that area. Notre Dame, as you know, it has that big plaza in front of it where those two towers that Ken spoke about, that is the north side of the cathedral, but this seems to be more in the center, not quite where those famous flying buttresses are on one end, but near the spire. And it's hard to tell at this point if they've been able to get any water on it in any way to sort of stop this fire from spreading.
I mean, the sky is only getting darker. Now, I know we have very limited information, but officials in Paris are saying that the fire could be linked to those renovations that are going on right now. Is that correct?
Sure. And well, I think that would be the first place they'll look, because, of course, any time there is construction or renovation going on in a building as old as this and you see this start, that would be the first place you would look. Right now, at the early route, we haven't heard anything about terrorism or arson or anything like that at this point. But again, it's early into this. Obviously, the first thing they have to do is get everybody out of there safely and stop this fire from spreading.
Is this the busiest week of tourists they have here? I'm guessing Palm Sunday yesterday.
Yep.
Easter less than a week away.
Right. You have Palm Sunday yesterday. You have Holy Thursday, obviously, on Thursday, Good Friday, the day that Christ was crucified, and then Easter on Sunday. So this is an extraordinarily busy week for every Catholic church around the world, but particular for the Cathedral of Notre Dame.
Look at that. Let's just take a minute. Look at this image. The cathedral engulfed in fire. And to your point, we have not yet seen any images. We know that there are firefighters in the building. My last guest said he could see some water cannons from the ground being shot towards the structure, but nothing near the roof where it really seems the start of this is.
That appears that the roof in this section, and you can see those famous flying buttresses there, the roof in that section of the cathedral is pretty well engulfed. And look at that, at the skyline of Paris, in a way that we have not seen, I would argue, probably in decades. I can't remember the last time we saw that kind of smoke coming from the skyline of Paris. It's a very, very difficult sight. And the fire around that spire is just extraordinary.
Just a reset for our audience, if you are just tuning in, that is the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris you are looking at right now, currently engulfed in flames. All tourists were evacuated within the last hour. People are now being pushed back. Just a few minutes ago, people were just 100 yards away on the street, but the ash and debris falling from that ash was getting on people. I spoke to a bystander just a few moments ago who said it felt like a hailstorm. Even in restaurants nearby, the debris was falling on those restaurants, leaving burn holes in the seats. So they have now pushed people back who are standing on the street and in nearby restaurants. And I want you to stay with me. Let's bring in to join us Carolyn Margulies. She is new at the cathedral, and she can see a lot from where she's standing right now. Carolyn, walk us through exactly where you are and where you've been for the last hour since this broke out.
Yeah, so I was walking with my friend, and we were just trying to go to a bookstore across the Seine, which is the big river that cuts across Paris. For those of y'all who don't know, the location of Notre Dame is kind of on an island in the middle of the Seine. So my friend and I were walking, and we saw a bunch of flames, and we thought, oh, that looks like it's coming from near Notre Dame. And then we walked closer, and we saw that Notre Dame itself was on fire. The fire seems to have originated from the back part of the church, which seems to be more the steeple. Right now, we're across the Seine, closer to the Centre Pompidou in the area called the Marais. So we're across the river, but we have a really clear shot of seeing the side, and the fire really seems to have worked its way forward. It's right now parts of the inside of the church are visible. It's destroyed most of the roof in the center, and there are just people crowded around, and there's just a huge pillar of green smoke.
How quickly did all of this happen?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
How quickly has this progressed? When did this all begin?
I think we probably got here about 20 minutes ago was when we first saw it. It might have been half an hour when we first saw the flames. When we first got there, it didn't seem to be that big. Like, the smoke was really big, but the flames seemed to be a lot smaller. And yeah, they weren't that visible. And then we walked around closer to the side, could see the flames, and it's really progressed pretty quickly. Yeah, it's working its way forward. We haven't really seen any. We've seen a couple firemen and fire trucks going towards the area, but we haven't seen any water thus far.
How far away are you at this point?
We are a couple blocks down. I think we're a good 7-minute walk away. We're a good couple blocks away.
Are the streets clear where you are? Have they been evacuated? Are they shut down?
No, we're far enough away that we're across the river, so pretty much everything's still going on. And there's a huge group of people. Just a lot of whom are crying and taking videos on their phone. A lot of cell reception is down, depending on what network you have. So no, but when we were closer to the area, there were a lot of parts that were shut down. And I think it seems like they've really been pushing people. Oh my God, this people just fell inside the church. Oh my God. It just fully collapsed to the inside of the church.
Carolyn, explain that to me again. You are looking at the church.
So on the church, there's the part that people have probably seen before with the big rose in the middle and the two towers. And then there's the part of the church, and there's a large steeple in the back, and that was where the fire seems to have originated, or at the base of that. And that just fully caught into flames and collapsed into the inside of the church.
My goodness, Ann Thompson still with me. Ann, these are live pictures at this moment. I mean, the spire is where the scaffolding already was. They were doing repairs there. So we know that the structure was compromised. How significant is that?
Oh, it's just a phenomenal loss. It's a phenomenal loss for the church, for Paris, for culture in general. I mean, this church Victor Hugo made it literally famous with the Hunchback of Notre Dame. For Catholics all over the world, it is a must-see when you go to Paris, the city of light. And for that spire to be consumed by flames and then apparently fall into the church itself, it's just one of those moments that absolutely just takes your breath away.
I mean, the skyline compromised forever. Carolyn, give us an update of what you can see where you are.
It's moving forward a lot faster. It's about to be at the part that most people see, like the front of the church. Like after the steeple fell in, the flames seem to be a lot more yellow. They seem to be originating from the inside of the church as well as the top. It's going to hit the front pretty soon, I think. Parts of the roof is caving in. I mean, it's really bad. It's really, really bad.
And it seems to only be getting worse. Carolyn, stay with me. I want to share a statement from the Paris mayor, Anne Hidalgo, just moments ago, urging the public to, quote, respect the security perimeter around the cathedral while emergency services tackle this terrible fire. Clearly, this is a cathedral, Anne mentioned it earlier, 12 million tourists a year. So this is a very crowded area. We know that everyone was evacuated, but in the last few minutes, they are pushing people even further and further from the perimeter. The mayor of Paris is urging people to respect that. French President Emmanuel Macron has confirmed that he has canceled plans for a televised speech that he was going to be giving tonight in light of the fire that is going on and clearly not under control at this point. The situation only seems to be worsening. Carolyn, moments ago you said you hadn't seen water yet. You saw a few firefighters. Has that situation changed? I mean, I know you are a good 7-minute walk, but what can you see now on the ground?
I mean, you can't, not from this end, you can't see any fire, like anyone trying to stop anything. I imagine to be, you can't, I can't see any, it doesn't seem like they're doing anything. The fire's just working its way down. I mean, it looks like part of the structure that was holding the steeple up is about to collapse, because that looks like it's made out of it looks like it's made out of wood, yeah. So I don't see any, it doesn't look like it's improving to me. It looks like it's about to get much, much worse.
Carolyn,
I don't know, though.
Hi, Carolyn. This is Ann Thompson. Have you seen any ambulances? Is there any indication that people have been injured in this fire? Was anybody taken out of the cathedral? Can you tell?
I mean, there are ambulances passing by us right now, and some firefighters it's sapeurs-pompiers, so they're like firefighters, and they seem to be also like emergency response folks. They're going forward. I haven't seen anyone who's been injured. My guess would be probably the most likely thing would be because of the smoke and the ash. The ash, even my friend and I, when we were standing pretty far away, as you can see from the video, we were being hit with ash. It felt like it was ash falling on our face.
Yeah. Is it
so
hard? Is it hard to
guess.
breathe in the area where you are?
It was pretty hard when we were standing downwind. Right now we're off to the side, but I imagine if you were downwind, that you would not be having an easy time breathing.
Yeah, the spire that's on fire is right over the altar in the Notre Dame cathedral, and so they thought the fire started just before 7. It's unclear if there was a mass going on at that time or even if there were tourists inside, but that's obviously one thing that we would hope to find out. But this is just, these pictures are unbelievable to look at.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day from New York. We're coming on the air with breaking news out of Paris, where a massive fire has erupted at the famed Notre Dame Cathedral, one of Europe's greatest landmarks. Videos shared on social media show the roof engulfed in flames. That's the scene early evening right now in Paris. This fire has been burning for at least an hour. Live picture there on the left side, you can see a close-up of one of the spire. Fully engulfed in flames. The flames appear to be concentrated on the back side of the famed cathedral. And one of the shots earlier revealed a number of scaffolding put in place, construction scaffolding around the site where the flames appeared to break out. But at this hour, obviously too early to name a cause. But different angles here, obviously, people sharing images via social media, that plume of smoke billowing away from that burning spire. There's a long shot across from the city of Paris, and you can see that fire is burning and putting a significant amount of smoke in the air. Of course, one of Europe's most famous tourist attractions. Let's go to NBC's Nancy Yang, who is in Paris right now. Nancy, what can you tell us?
Lester, the fire is ravaging throughout the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and we just learned from the firefighters on site that the spiral, which is 96 meters high, has collapsed. This is extremely tragic because the Notre Dame is the most loved and the most visited monument in Paris. More visitors come here than the Eiffel Tower or visit the Arc de Triomphe. So watching this fire rage in the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and watching how it spreads is just taking everyone by surprise.
Nancy, this is obviously, as I noted, one of the great tourist attractions of Paris, if not all of Europe. Would people have normally been inside at that point of the day?
Yes, I think a lot of visitors would still be in there just before the cathedral closes. As I said, this is the most visited, and most people are here this week just before Easter coming up, and all day long visitors go in to see and visit the beautiful stained glass windows. And ironically, I was there just 4 days ago filming inside the cathedral, going way up into the rafters and speaking to the spokesperson and one of the leaders of the churches, who was telling us that the church has been under construction for the last few years, and the spiral, which has just collapsed, was one of the main pieces of construction that is going on. And so it seems that something went wrong, and I think that everyone will be investigating how this fire broke out.
Yeah, Nancy, along with a lot of Americans, it's certainly a place I have visited. However, I've never made the trip up to the top. It's over 300, almost 400 steps that people take to go up to the top. Is that still open during the construction?
It's only open up to a certain point, but certainly up on the rooftop, it's been closed for the past year because there is massive construction going on. And they've been fundraising quite heavily in the United States. In fact, many of the donors to fix the rooftop of Notre Dame, because the structure has been crumbling, and the rooftop is made out of wood. Outside, it looks very solid, but inside it's been crumbling, and even gargoyles have been dropping off the rooftop. So many donors had been contributing to the construction, and so it has been closed for the last year. So the only people who would be up there would be workers.
Yeah, and we see these pictures may be delayed a few moments, but now we see the spire no longer in the picture there. And we did, as I did note, there was construction scaffolding around the area where these flames first appeared to break out. Again, this has been burning for well over an hour. This is a cell phone image that someone shot there. Notre Dame on an island there in the middle of Paris. And there is the scene from across the city. And all eyes now on this famed example of French Gothic architecture. Chris Jansing is joining me here in the studio with a little more. Chris?
Yeah, you can see the way the smoke is going out, and there has been all kinds of debris that's following, obviously ash that is falling from the sky. So that's why they extended where people can go. They've moved people further and further away. Having been there, you know, Lester, that very close by the cathedral, there are cafes and restaurants. One of the great places to go and sit and just watch the world go by are these cafes that are literally just across the street, just across the way from Notre Dame Cathedral. And so people were there, and they described, as I've been trying to follow this on French media, on Le Monde newspaper, people were just feeling almost a rain shower of ash coming down. This is, as you point out, in the very center of Paris, so you'll be able to see it from much of that city. But even though at any time of year, I know the last couple of times I've gone to Notre Dame, I've noticed how much longer the lines have gotten to get in. So many more people have been traveling to Europe and wanting to see this iconic cathedral. But this is Holy Week. Yesterday, obviously, a very important day with Palm Sunday. Then there would have been special services going on all week long on Holy Thursday, on Good Friday, and of course, a high mass that would be taking place on Easter on Sunday.
President Trump has tweeted about this, saying so horrible to watch the massive fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. On the phone with me now is Ken LeClaire. He is an American who is visiting Paris, and he is near the scene there. Ken, can you tell us what you're seeing and how close you are to Notre Dame?
All right, that's right. I would guess I'm about 500 to 600 yards off the front right corner, in a sort of a narrow street, but it's a perfect opening, sadly, to the side of the building, which where it looked like the fire had started towards the back, and it basically has moved its way to the entire between the two towers in the front and the spire in the back. The entire roof is collapsed in. Sadly, there's nothing left in the middle, and the fire is just sadly making its way to the front towers. They do have water. There's a big bucket truck that's shooting water on the front. It looks like they're trying to, keep it from getting to the two front towers. But they still have 20 and 30 foot flames that are shooting out from what was the beginning of the rooftop.
Yeah, you've got a better vantage point than our cameras, because what we have not seen is the efforts of firefighters who we know are definitely on the scene. So they're shooting from the outside of the church toward the flames.
Correct. I can't tell if there's. I can't imagine there's anyone in this building. I mean, there's just way too many flames for I would imagine them to be inside. But if you're looking from the courtyard in the front, and so you see the two square towers at the front of the building.
Sure.
There's a bucket truck. There's a bucket truck right off the right corner that's feeding water into the opening where the roof used to be, trying to keep the flame from making it to the front.
This is obviously an area, as my colleague noted a moment ago, an area where people enjoy the view from cafes and line the riverfront there. Can you tell us what the scene is with just people on the streets? Do you get a sense that Paris is standing still right now?
Yeah, there's a lot, obviously a lot of people, plus they feel it's just back, so there's a lot more people in the streets, about, like I said, 300, 400, 500 yards away. A lot of emotion is, like us, we're in the building a half hour, 45 minutes before, and then we're sitting in one of those cafes you were just talking about.
Yeah, it is. It's an awful picture to look at as we watch this scene and various angles. None of them makes it any better. It's this famed piece of Europe, of Paris. Its most popular attraction now in flames there. And as we saw in one of the shots, the famous spire there now has burned and collapsed. But if you look at this picture right now, note the scaffolding that extends up about 4 levels and then crosses over and then 4 levels back down. So obviously a site we noted of construction. They've been doing a lot of restoration there. The history of Notre Dame includes periods of destruction and rebuilding, and probably it goes without saying that whatever damage here will be rebuilt. But right now, the city knocked back on its heels as they watch Notre Dame burn. Chris?
One of the things that is notable about Notre Dame, and anyone who has walked around it, is that rear, where it seems to have begun, is arguably as beautiful as the front facade. And there are so many, obviously, interior, priceless works of art. I can remember being back there, maybe it was the late 1990s, early 2000s, where they had just redone the famed stained glass rose windows. So what we see from the outside is obviously horrifying. It's one of the most beautiful and important places in all of Europe, but obviously priceless works of art inside as well, Lester.
Yeah, one of my favorite places is near the back of the church, of the cathedral there, where that fire is burning. There's a little park area and benches and just an area to, when you've been on your feet all day visiting France, visiting Paris to rest and just take in the flying buttresses there, which it's known for, and just the very tranquil scene around Notre Dame. And it's sad for all of us to watch it burn right now. I think we have that video now we can show you of the spire collapsing just a short while ago, and I was monitoring a microphone from the area, and there was an audible groan from the crowd as that spire split in two and the top half falling into the flames. Even the live pictures right now seem to show the fire, if only intensifying, even though firefighters outside this picture are pouring water on it, but there must be a great deal of fuel for it to continue to rage. And this has been going on for well over an hour, and I don't have the exact time it broke out, but it's been burning for well over an hour. Sarah Harmon with NBC News is in our London bureau, where we are gathering resources and monitoring what's happening in Paris. Sarah, what can you add?
Hi, Lester. Well, obviously, it's a huge gut punch for anyone who loves the city, who loves France, who loves art, to watch this 850-year-old building, one of the world's finest examples of Gothic architecture, is burning before our eyes. We know Élysée Palace says that French President Emmanuel Macron is now on his way to the scene. French media is quoting officials from the French Fire Brigade claiming this fire could potentially be related to renovation efforts on this cathedral. Obviously, that's not confirmed. At this point, we don't have any reports of injuries, which is pretty incredible when you look at the scale of that blaze, Lester.
All right, Sarah Harmon, thank you. Let's go to Paris now to Nancy Ng, our NBC News producer in Paris. You're monitoring, obviously, French media there. Are they making any progress on this fire?
All the firefighters are at the scene, and we know that they're trying their very best, but it seems that the flames just continue to grow, and it doesn't seem that they have it under control yet. The mayor of Paris just tweeted, and she said this was a horrible fire, that everyone was to stay outside of the perimeter to let the firefighters do their jobs. We know of no victims at the moment, no one injured, so that's a good sign. But it looks like the Notre Dame Cathedral is losing a lot of its beauty tonight because the damage looks so great. It's just so horrifying to watch.
Yeah, Nancy Ng in Paris, thank you. And no matter what angle, what camera angle we show you, this picture only grows worse. And look at the crowds of people right now as that camera pulls out. I mean, everyone just stopping and watching, no doubt with a shared sense of disbelief to watch this amazing landmark go up in flames. The fire had appeared to be burning primarily in the rear of the building, but it seems like so much of the roof now, and if you look onto the right there was more debris that just collapsed in a cloud of smoke. But it seems to be engulfing much of the roof. We can only imagine what it looks like inside, what sort of damage has occurred there. This This cathedral, we noted, was built between the 12th and 14th century and has had an incredible history. There is long lines of tourists that gather every day to climb up for the amazing views from the top. 387 steps, according to a website. The view up the top is one worth taking, one I haven't been able to take advantage of, but it is a very popular attraction that brings long lines there.
Henry VI was crowned there. Mary Stuart, you talk about the history. It is absolutely extraordinary. The towers go up 223 feet, and the view inside and outside is absolutely breathtaking. Anyone who has ever been in knows when you walk inside and you look up and you see the grandeur of the place, it is truly unbelievable. And of course, also legendary because of Quasimodo and Victor Hugo. He invented that hunchback, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So both in literature, in real life, and in the history of France and in Europe, this is a place that is unparalleled.
And the home church of the Archdiocese of Paris, Notre Dame. I want to go to Hallie Jackson right now at the White House. Hallie, I noted a moment ago the president is making some remarks about this.
He did via Twitter, Lester. The president tweeting, "It is so horrible to watch the massive fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris." He says perhaps flying water tankers could be used to put it out. Must act quickly. Should note that as this has gripped the world's attention, it has also gripped the attention of the commander-in-chief. We know that when he tweeted about this fire, he was on Air Force One. He has just landed in Minnesota. He is there for a couple of events related to tax day and the tax law that was passed in his administration. But at this point, he has been sitting on the tarmac for probably 10 to 15 minutes. It's a bit of an unusual delay. The greeters who had been set to meet him on the ground have boarded Air Force One, have come aboard the plane. Again, not something we typically see. We cannot say definitively that the president is watching the coverage of this fire at Notre Dame, but we know that he at some point had been watching that coverage given the tweet. I asked a White House official what the president may have meant by that phrase flying water tanker. Likely that the president, I'm told, was referring to those sort of big planes, Lester, that you might see, for example, out at a forest fire in California or out west, dropping some kind of a retardant onto the flames. But this is clearly something that the president is watching closely. We are monitoring for reaction, not just from the White House, but from the various embassies, from the State Department as well. So far, we know the State Department is seeing this. They've tweeted about it, but we are looking for more information. As you can see, the tweet there from the French president, Emmanuel Macron, up on screen as well, Lester.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thank you very much. Just as that camera, you're looking at that view tilted away. We actually got our first glimpse of firefighters who are on that, I don't know if that's a balcony or what that is, area, but in a position to fight the flames now from the roof or near the roof itself. And according to the descriptions on the ground, they are firing streams of water from the ground as well. The church is, I think, 226 feet. I'll double check that, tall. Would not be easy to get for firefighters in a traditional way, and given the soaring ceilings there. But clearly there was construction going on, and that will be the first area of investigation as to whether that could have been part of what started this horrible fire.
This is a place, Lester, where they have seen tragedy before. And in fact, when Napoleon was there in 1804, it was in such a state of disrepair. And there you hear the gasps, which I don't know how many times we'll see that and we'll still be gasping. But it really wasn't until around World War II that there was a major restoration that was done, a major restoration on the organ as well. In those circles, in musical circles, the organ inside there is absolutely legendary.
Known for the bells.
Known for the bells as well, yeah. And you can't also discuss, I think, the history of Notre Dame without talking about maybe the most famous story, which is of Joan of Arc. And so whether it's Napoleon or Joan of Arc, or as we mentioned before, Henry VI, Mary Stuart, this is a place where historians art historians, as well as millions of tourists come every year because of the glorious nature of what is there and the history of what has happened there.
And as you noted, though, there's so much history here, but it's also a place that people in that French tradition just want to take in the moment, the people watching and the cafes that line.
It's a fantastic. It was a fantastic people watching, and they call this church as Our Lady. That is a sort of a Catholic a way of saying this is the respect that they give to Notre Dame, obviously still used by the Catholic Church today for Sunday Mass, and as you said, the seat of the Archbishop.
Yeah, and the Notre Dame actually sits on an island. I'm going to try and pronounce it. Île de Cité.
Île de Cité.
All right, very good. So, City Island.
Yes, the island in the middle of the city. This is really the part of Paris that was first settled, right dead center of Paris.
We want to go back to Sarah Harmon right now, who is in our London bureau, where we are monitoring all the developments coming out of Paris. Sarah?
Hey, Lester, a church spokesman has told French media now that all of Notre Dame's cathedral's frame is burning after the spire collapsed. Just to give you an idea of the scale, I mean, we're also getting eyewitness reports that the roof has collapsed from people who were on the ground. We know from Élysée Palace that French President Emmanuel Macron is on his way to the scene. He's postponed a planned televised speech to the nation in order to visit Notre Dame and see the scene for himself. Authorities are saying this fire could be linked to renovation work, as you mentioned earlier. It's unclear if anyone has been hurt. So far, though, we don't have any reports of casualties, which is pretty incredible when you look at the scale of this blaze.
Yeah, and you have to wonder about the construction workers who may have been there at the time. It stays light awfully long this time of year in Paris, so we don't know when the construction had knocked off for the day. I think I first heard about this at around, I guess it would have been around 7 o'clock Paris time.
As best we can tell, the fire started around 7 o'clock. It's now just after 8, so it's been burning for a little over an hour based on the information we have right now. It seems that it closed to visitors shortly before the blaze broke out, which might help to explain why we don't have any casualty reports right now. But this is early days, Lester. As you can see, the fire still very much burning. This is still an active situation. Things could happen really quickly now.
Yeah, the smoke plume seems to have lessened somewhat, but we're still seeing some pretty intense flames coming in there. But the fact the smoke is dying down would seem to suggest that firefighters are getting water where they need it now. It can't be an easy place to fight a fire, certainly at in the roof section. But this is a live picture we're looking at now of the Notre Dame Cathedral. The flames still licking quite high from the roof area, that construction area. But there in that long shot, it appears to be less smoke than we had seen before.
And this cathedral has faced destruction and disrepair before. There were at least two major restorations in 1845 and then in 1991. But never before have we seen, Lester, what we're seeing now. The facade has remained largely intact through history to the original building of the Notre Dame Cathedral. So what we're seeing here is beyond heartbreaking.
Yeah, and there you see the firefighters. It's a tough angle they've got. They're obviously at the end of their of that telescoping truck they're on, and trying to get that water onto the fire itself. But no easy task. This is a place that architecture buffs just love to visit. You can see some of the flying buttresses there, the French Gothic design. It's one of the finest examples of the French Gothic design, and it draws people just for the architecture. You can see more firefighters there. Again, the water, they're at about as far as high as they can get without going onto the roof itself, just trying to get as much water as they can. It seems to be having some effect based on the smoke, but still lots of flame there. And there's another team going up.
Obviously, anytime you have a restoration of this magnitude, and we could see in some of the early pictures just how much scaffolding there is concern, there's difficulty, there are very particular challenges with this. But it will be, and we've already heard from some officials in France that this will be the first place that they are looking for how this fire started.
We should note, we mentioned a moment ago, the president had tweeted and suggested that a water tanker drop. My years of reporting, I don't think I've ever seen a water tanker used in an urban fire. That's something we normally see in wildfire, so I don't think that is probably on the option list here, but I mentioned it because the president mentioned it. But this is going to have to be just getting as much water as they can to that roof, and you can see that's a tough angle there. Typically, they like to be able to shoot straight in or down onto the fire.
There's also, famously, the structure itself it is wood timber. The framing of it, the interior framing of it is wood timber involving about 52 acres of trees dating back to the 12th century. And every single beam in that structure was made from an individual tree. So that lattice of the woodwork that's so famous in the cathedral was actually nicknamed the forest. And it was also one of the very earliest, you talked about the architectural significance, one of the earliest structures that had those famed exterior flying buttresses that have become so iconic. This
angle really gives you an idea of the size of the construction scaffolding that had been erected there. It's a significant setup. What may have been taking place there today that could have sparked this, we may not know for some time, and hopefully the construction crews had left or were able to beat a hasty retreat as those flames got out of control. This shot, this is from the rear side. This looks like this might be from, there's another island, Saint Louis, I believe, across the way.
There are a number of exterior statues, which you'll recall from your visit there. And I had heard in the early reporting that I was checking again in French media that many of those statues, because of the scaffolding, had already been taken down in order to get up the scaffolding. So at least we know that those would have been saved.
Would have been preserved. You and I were in Paris a few years ago for the Bataclan theater attack. Watching that city mourn and deal with that crisis. They have had, dealing with terrorism, they have had more than their share of turmoil in Paris over the last few years. This does not appear to be terrorism. It just appears right now to be an accident, but no less painful for the people of Paris.
I remember vividly when we were there, Lester, talking to residents of Paris and them talking about their pride in their city. They may not all have been on the same page politically. They may have lived in different parts of the city. But when that terror attack happened, they talked about their pride in the city, the beauty of the city, how concerned they were at the time, not just for financial reasons, but because of pride of place. They were concerned about whether tourists would return, whether or not people would be afraid to come to Paris. And of course, what we've seen is that millions of people flock every year to Paris. And this is not just the #1 place they visit, but twice as many people visit there as visit the Eiffel Tower.
We want to listen in now. Our partners Euronews, and Annalise Bourget is reporting from the scene. Let's listen.
Enormous cry of disappointment, of shock. A lady I spoke to a few moments ago was very worried about her daughter who works nearby. For now, we have no reports of anyone being injured. Authorities are said to have evacuated the building very quickly. But it is heartbreaking to see, and everywhere around me right now, people have their phones up or they're simply fixated in that picture of the smokes, the thick smokes going up, and the roof that has now completely collapsed. There is nothing left, or nearly nothing left, of the Notre Dame roof. This is a very symbolic monument for Paris, a very important monument for the whole of the country. And so you can only imagine what the streets of Paris are like right now. Many people have been crying, have been manifesting their pain and their shock in watching these pictures. And what is very impressive is just the speed with which this whole thing has evolved, because this fire was reported around 10 to 7 p.m. local time, so just over an hour and a half ago. And this is the result. Pretty much the whole roof has now collapsed. Sorry, ma'am, can I please ask you? Thank you very much. I'm just asking this lady to move so you can see properly what's happening right now, and also it gives you an idea of just how many people are out in the streets right now. Many, as I said, have tears in their eyes and are extremely saddened to see this happen. Authorities are coming to the scene. The French president is said to be coming to the scene shortly. The mayor of Paris, whose office is just nearby, has already been to the Notre Dame. And so it's a really, obviously a really, really sad day for Paris.
Thank you very much, Annalise Borges. Now, we'll be coming back to you, obviously, throughout the evening.
That's dipping into our partners at Euronews. Annalise Borges reporting from the scene there. And you can see now firefighters getting some healthy amount of water in the area where the most intense flames are coming out. There's more firefighters working along a balcony, if you will, trying to position a place to get, you can see the flames now licking inside. Very, very difficult, very challenging building for firefighters to get a handle on this. If you're just joining us, this is the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, heavily engulfed in flames. The spire has collapsed, its main spire has collapsed, and we're told the roof has collapsed and the interior walls are suffering significant damage as well. This occurred a little after, maybe a little before 7 o'clock this evening, early evening at least, in Paris. Around 2 o'clock Eastern time, a time when, according to what I saw, Chris Jansen is here with what I saw on the web, I think they closed at 6:45 for tourists. So it's been around the same time that tourists were exiting that this broke out. But it is, from all the accounts we're getting, it has brought Paris to a standstill, all eyes looking in the direction of the plume of smoke and the brilliant flames that can be seen for appear to be several miles based on some of the pictures we've had from Paris.
13 million people visit this every year, and the exterior obviously so iconic, and there are all kinds of biblical stories that are illustrated on the exterior of this building, which you now see in flames. And part of the reason for that, and it's not unique to this cathedral, but when this was built, it began construction in the 1100s. The first round of it finished in the mid, I think, 1200s. Most of the people were illiterate. And so the Bible stories were actually part of the architecture. It was in some ways a book for the Catholic faithful who could not read, to see those stories displayed without even going inside the cathedral.
Yeah, the President Macron has tweeted, and the translation is, "Our Lady of Paris in flames, emotion of a whole nation, thoughts for all Catholics and for all French, like all our countrymen. I'm sad tonight to see this part of us burn." That's English translation of President Macron's tweet of just a few moments ago. On the ground, watching along with the rest of us, but up close, is Carolyn Margolis, an American tourist who is in Paris right now. Carolyn, can you tell us how close you are to the scene and what you're seeing from your vantage point?
Hi, Yeah, so I'm a couple blocks away, about a good 5 to 7 minute walk. I'm in a different area near the Centre Pompidou, but I have a pretty clear view of Notre Dame. So if you're looking at the front, I'm on the left-hand side. So I have a left-hand side view of the church.
And does it appear, is the fire lessening at all? Does it feel like they're getting a handle on it?
Yeah, it looks like it. The smoke originally, when we first saw it, as the flames were pretty small about an hour and a half ago now, maybe an hour, the flames were really big. They kept growing, but now it looks like it's being contained. The smoke was originally pretty greenish, and then it turned orange, and then it turned black, and now it's back to being like a blackish, like a grayish color, only it's mostly coming from the very back, underneath where the steeple was and where the altar of the church would be.
And Carolyn, had you been visiting the cathedral today or during your visit?
So I actually live in France and I work about an hour away from here. So I had a friend who came and visited for a week. And so we went to visit Notre Dame yesterday, I think. On Friday, excuse me. And so today we were going to be walking to Shakespeare and Company, which is right across the way, right across the Seine. We saw a huge pillar of smoke and we were like, oh, that looks like it's really close to Notre Dame. We walked even closer and saw it was Notre Dame herself.
When you were there, were there signs of construction? Were there things that normally were accessible to tourists that weren't because of the construction?
I don't believe so within the church. Parts of it were closed off when we went because Mass was occurring. But there were some parts off to the side that were kind of closed off near where some of the gardens and some of the areas you can walk along the Seine. But besides that, they're like within the church, nothing was closed off. No.
All right. And you haven't seen any signs of or heard anything about anyone being injured?
No, the church actually closes at about 6:45, I believe, to prepare for Mass because they have Mass every evening. And so from my understanding, from what I've heard, no one has been injured. My guess would be most of the injuries, if any occur from this, would have to do with the smoke. If you were downwind for this, it would be pretty bad. My friend and I were a couple blocks away, and even then we could feel some of the smoke and some of the ash hitting our face, and it felt like an ashy rain. It was pretty gross.
Yeah, it looked pretty significant on the views we were seeing as well. Carolyn Margolis, thank you very much for talking to us. As we noted, this is the seat of the Archdiocese of Paris, but a cathedral with such a profound part of a history of the Catholic Church. George Weigel is our Vatican expert who often joins us for coverage of all things Vatican, but can offer a little perspective about the importance of Notre Dame. George, good to have you on.
Hi, Lester. It's a sad day, obviously. I'm really thinking about the beginning of that extraordinary television series, Civilization, by Kenneth Clark, some 50 years ago. And the first shot in that series is Kenneth Clark standing in front of Notre Dame and saying, I'm not sure I know how to define civilization, but I know I'm looking at it. You know, President Macron talked about the great loss to the entire French nation. This is a loss to the entire world. This building, almost 1,000 years old, represents the human spirit at its noblest. The aspiration to goodness, to truth, to beauty. And to see it go up in smoke is a very, very heartbreaking thing, I have to say.
I noted that the Archdiocese of Paris that's the home church there. Is there a special responsibility with not only leading the church in a city like Paris, but to have that as your home?
Well, I think that Notre Dame symbolizes over 1,500 years of Christian history in France. The building itself isn't that old, but it came to embody over the centuries the entire Christian experience in that part of Western Europe. And it's wonderful architecture and glass, I think, embodied the human spirit rising for something, seeking something nobler than our own self-aggrandizement, seeking something transcendent. Amazing that this should be happening in Holy Week, the center of the Christian liturgical year. I'm also thinking of my friend, the former Archbishop of Paris, Cardinal Jean-Marie Lustiger, who's buried in Notre Dame. An astonishing figure, child of victims of the Holocaust, himself a convert to Catholicism, chosen by John Paul II, the son of Polish Jews, to be the Archbishop of Paris, who made that cathedral the center of his ministry for almost 20 years, and was a real light of reason and goodness and faith for all of the people of France, believers or not. So this is a real tragedy for everyone, and it extends beyond France, I think, to everyone who loves beauty and who loves truth.
Yeah, well said. George Weigel, thank you for speaking with us and giving us some historical perspective of this amazing cathedral in Paris. I want to go right back to Sarah Harmon right now in our London bureau. Sarah, what more can you tell us?
Well, Paris's deputy mayor says that first responders are now trying to salvage the art and the other priceless pieces that were stored in this cathedral. And Lester, the spire that we watched being destroyed is thought to have contained relics considered sacred to Catholics, including a relic believed to be from Jesus Christ's crown of thorns, relics from various saints. And we also know that the Paris prosecutor's office says it has started an inquiry into what caused this fire. A church official is saying the wooden interior of this 12th century landmark is burning, and he believes that as well is likely to be destroyed. So a tremendous scale of devastation as we watch this fire continue to burn. Over an hour since it started now.
Yeah, still going, but thankfully, at least from the vantage point from the outside, they appear to be getting somewhat of a handle on it, but still those brilliant flames now from the center of the cathedral. But looking here from the front, you can also see the smoke plume has died down considerably as darkness begins to creep over Paris. 8:30 in the evening there now as we watch these live pictures of firefighters now getting water to the flames themselves. Clearly not an easy feat given the size and shape and height of that building. I think once one of the tallest structures in Paris before the Eiffel Tower.
And you mentioned nightfall. If you look at any guidebook about Paris, they will talk about the monuments that are lit at night, Sacré-Cœur, the Eiffel Tower, and of course, the view of Notre Dame after nightfall, all aglow in light, is one of the most spectacular sights anywhere. You know, you mentioned the Ile de la Cité, which is this island floating between the left and the right banks of the Seine. And if you're walking and you cross over the eastern end of the island, I think particularly at night, this cathedral, which is lit up, is just almost beyond words how beautiful it is. And now, of course, it's aglow in flames. And it's like a gut punch to think about what is being lost here.
Journalist Patrick Gailey is there right now. Patrick, how close are you to this, and what are you observing?
Hi there. I'm right on the banks of the river, the other side, because they've evacuated the island. So I'm probably about 90 meters away. I can see the rear of the two iconic towers, and just to the left from where I'm looking at it, I can see the hole where the roof used to be and the spire used to be of Notre Dame.
Were you? Had you been in the cathedral yourself?
I have, yes, several times. I live here, so whenever sort of friends or family visit, it's a must-see, and especially if you climb up and you can look down and you get a sense of really how old the building is when you're there.
We're looking at the building, we're looking at the flames, but can you look around and tell me what it is like on the streets right now for Parisians and tourists alike to sit and to stand and watch this occur?
Yeah, certainly. So I was there the moment that the spire fell down. It was clear that it was going to come down because of the way the fire was going. There was a huge crowd gathered just outside the town hall, which is the other side of the river. And when the tower came down, there were people crying, gasps, shouts of disbelief. Now, as the evening sets in, I'm on the banks of the Seine. People are sat quietly, taking photos. They're talking to their friends. Some people have opened bottles of wine, and they're just taking in a scene with a sort of quiet shock and disbelief.
Yeah. And you mentioned you live in Paris, and this is the must-go-to place, I'm sure, when you have visitors.
Yeah, certainly. It's sort of right in the heart of the city. It's the one thing other than the Eiffel Tower that you see no matter where you turn, and the area around Notre Dame, the Ile de la Cité, is it's the oldest part of Paris, one of the oldest parts of Paris, and it's got an extremely gorgeous surrounding area of a lot of very old original buildings. Notre Dame survived everything that Paris has ever been through, the wars, the revolution, the commune, but a lot of it is not there tonight.
Yeah. All right, Patrick Gailey, thank you, a journalist, for checking in and giving us your perspective. So much of the fabric of this city, and as he alluded to, it's had a rough history of vandalism and destruction and restoration. And anyone who knows just even a brief history of this place, I think, will have the confidence that it will rise again, or it will be restored to its glory again. But it's an awful shame that for a long time people will not be able to visit this amazing place.
I always thought of this not just as a beautiful place, which is very obvious, Lester, but also a very joyous place. There's a large square out front, as you know. There are always street performers there. There are the usual souvenir sellers, and you can get your water and your snack. But there are always large groups of people, families, couples. I can't even tell you how many times I've been walking across that square and someone has stopped me, a couple, would you mind taking our photo? It's just a very festive attitude. Even people who don't want to necessarily get in the line, depending on how long the line is, the whole atmosphere around there is just one of positivity and beauty and a joyousness. I always loved, if I was anywhere near there, even if I wasn't going inside the cathedral, to pass around it, to look at it, and to see the scene, which was very iconically French.
And also a place of national mourning at times. I recall several years ago being there as a mass was held in honor of those who died on Air France Flight 447. That had crashed after leaving Brazil. And, you know, it was a solemn place, as we have ours, you know, St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, but a place that where people would come to heal and to mark solemn moments. And that solemn moment now is what is happening at Notre Dame Cathedral. You can still see the glowing embers now from inside the church as the roof has been eaten away. You can also see the scaffolding I keep pointing out that traverses much of that rooftop. That was part of a restoration, rebuilding project that was underway, and I'm sure it will be among the first things to be looked at as a potential source of this fire. But for now, it's about trying to save. We understand the artwork, some pieces that can be saved from inside, and to save as much of this cathedral as is possible. Sarah Harmon, our NBC correspondent in our London newsroom, is continuing to monitor the feeds and information coming out of Paris. Sarah?
Yeah, salvaging that artwork has got to be a huge priority for emergency services right now. We also know France's prosecutor has begun an inquiry into the cause of the fire, and that scaffolding that you mentioned, Lester, is certainly going to be a key focus as they look into what caused this historic building to break out in flames. We know that the spire has completely collapsed, but a church official is also saying that the whole wooden frame of Notre Dame is also burning. That's obviously very disturbing to think that the fire has gotten down that far. This is the most popular monument in all of France. It's more popular even than the Eiffel Tower. A huge loss for the city, and one we don't even know the complete scale of yet.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Joining us on the phone now is Bishop Robert Barron of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. Bishop Barron, thank you for joining us.
Lester, thank you. I'm just devastated by this. I just got to L.A. I was in the car and just heard the news about this.
Yeah, tell us, you know, the historic significance for the Catholic Church of Notre Dame.
Well, it's extraordinary, and I have a very personal connection to it. I studied in Paris. I got did my doctoral work there, and every Wednesday, for the 3 years I was there, I gave tours at Notre Dame. And so I lived about a 10-minute walk from there, and it was a very special place for me personally. For Catholics, it's of extraordinary significance. You know, it's the maybe Chartres surpassed in terms of beauty and integrity and all that, but of the Gothic Church is one of the most important, and it just sums up so much of the Catholic history and spirit. It's meant to symbolize the body of Christ, meant to symbolize the cross, which you can see in the design of the cathedral. This one has survived so much. It survived war and revolution and social change, and that's what's so devastating as I look at these pictures, that after 800 years, you know, to see it compromised this severely. And then those windows, there are so many windows from the 13th century in that building. And I'm chagrined to think that they would be compromised. But
and maybe you can enlighten us on the spire that we watched crash down a little while ago. I understand that it contains significant relics.
Well, I'm so puzzled by that. When I was in Paris, the relics were in the trésor, so-called, the treasury. I don't know if they're in that spire. That spire was constructed in the 19th century. It's very beautiful. I'm looking at it now burning, which is heartbreaking. It's very striking, but it was part of the 19th century renovation of Notre Dame. But much of that building is is authentically medieval, especially the windows, which are magnificent.
And there are a number of, burial crypts inside the cathedral.
Yeah, sure. Bishops and the kings are buried up in Saint Denis, but we have bishops going back to the early Middle Ages buried there. But it's a spiritual center, for Catholicism, but also I'd say for all of Europe, it's a spiritual center. And then from a cultural standpoint, as it was just said a few minutes ago, the most visited site in Paris, meaning one of the most visited sites in Europe. But it's heartbreaking as I look at these pictures, because I used to so often see Notre Dame there from the back. I would sit there by the Seine to read or to go for a walk, and it's the most magnificent site overlooking the Seine. So it's devastating to me, personally, as well as to all Catholics.
Bishop Barron, good to talk to you again. Thank you for joining us in our coverage here.
You're quite welcome.
President Emmanuel Macron of France says the fire that's consuming Notre Dame is taking part of everyone in France with it. President Trump is speaking about it. Now let's listen.
No cathedral. I think I could say there's probably no cathedral in the world like it. It's a terrible scene. They think it was caused by, at this moment they don't know, but they think it was caused by renovation. And I hope that's the reason. Renovation, what's that all about? But it's a terrible sight to behold. With that being said, I want to tell you that a lot of progress has been made by our country in the last 2.5 years. Hard to believe we're already starting to think about.
President Trump, and on a trip to Minneapolis, but before getting down to the business at hand, noting what we're all feeling is this the sense of sadness over what we're seeing from Paris. Notre Dame on fire right now, a significant fire that has destroyed a good portion of the roof, and we understand even the interior walls now are threatened. The flames dying down somewhat, but still easy to see as they continue to pour water on Notre Dame. 8:45 in the evening there. This broke out around, would have been around 7 o'clock Paris time this evening. Hallie Jackson is at the White House. Hallie, we heard a little bit about the president there. He had tweeted and now making these comments.
Yeah, talking about what a terrible fire this has been. Lester, as you mentioned, he is in Minnesota. He is there, and he was just beginning his remarks as we cut away from them on his tax law, trying to rally support for that. But clearly, what is capturing his attention is what is capturing the attention of so many people, not just in this country and in Europe, but around the world, this fire at Notre Dame as the night begins to fall there. We know that the First Lady, not only has the president been talking about this and has been made aware of this, but the First Lady was as well. She was briefed prior to remarks that she made to members of the military and their families down in Fort Bragg today. She has requested updates. We've also seen reaction from, for example, Vice President Mike Pence, from Ivanka Trump as well, the president's, of course, daughter and senior advisor. So clearly this is something that President Trump is watching. What we'll be waiting to find out is if and when he will reach out to his counterpart in France, Emmanuel Macron, to offer sympathy or support, for example. The president is tied up in a couple of different meetings and roundtables this afternoon, but that is something we are asking the White House about as well. So far, the State Department, of course, on top of this, they know this is happening, and we're looking to see any reaction from our embassies around the world, Lester.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thank you. And President Macron is said to be heading to the scene there in Notre Dame. He says he sees a part of us being on fire, meaning a part of France being on fire. Emmanuel Macron, again, on his way to the scene there. There's some more flame from the interior, but clearly we have seen less fire and less smoke. That's a great thing. Aaron Zelensky is with the works with the Daily Beast. He is in Paris right now. Aaron, can you tell us what you're seeing?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a chaotic scene here. The police have shut down 2 major metro stations, several bridges, several roads. It's very difficult to get too close. But even I'm a bit down the River Seine. Even from a ways away, I can still see smoke coming from the cathedral and flames earlier as well, but those seem to have died down a bit.
Aaron, what was it like when word began to spread that Notre Dame was on fire? Aaron, you still with me?
Yes.
Yeah, what was it like? I don't know where you were when it broke out, but can you give us a sense what it was like as word rippled across Paris that Notre Dame was on fire?
Well, I live on the opposite side of the city, so it came through initially on news wires, and at first people didn't react too strongly. I mean, there was a trash can on fire, but then as the word got out that it was quite a major fire, there was some photos showing up on social media, a lot of shock and devastation, I would say. But this cathedral it's an iconic symbol of the city, the way the Eiffel Tower is.
Yeah, there is such intense pride in this particular landmark, and it's a city with an overabundance of amazing and beautiful places, but this ranks at the top, I think, for a lot of people. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us, and joined now by Ann Thompson, NBC News correspondent here in the studio in New York. You have been there, I'm sure, a number of times.
Many times,
and what are your thoughts as you watch this, and what can you tell us?
You know, when I saw that spire collapse, all I could think of was it was like watching a dagger go through the heart of Paris. That is what Notre Dame is to that city. It is not just a cathedral for Catholics. It is a source of pride for all Parisians. And to see that spire fall is something we never thought, I certainly never thought I would ever see anything like this. I mean, when you think about this cathedral, it was built in 1160. It has survived all kinds of renovations. It was defaced during the French Revolution. And then tonight a fire takes it. I think what's equally amazing as we sort of watch these sickening pictures is at this point we have no reports of injuries. And Notre Dame traditionally closes at 6:45 at night, and that was just before this fire broke out. So it is amazing, and kudos to the people in the cathedral if they were able to get all the tourists out before anything happened. But you think of that building, and it's a wonderful way to see Paris. About a decade ago, I brought my nephew to Paris, and we went up the North Tower, and he was 15 years old. He loved the gargoyles. He thought those were pretty cool. I was fascinated with the rose windows. There are 3 of them in the cathedral. But the cathedral, aside from being the heart of the Catholic Church, there is also significant because there are 3 relics there, and apparently the 3 relics were in the spire that fell. And supposedly a piece of the crown of thorns that Jesus Christ wore on the day he was crucified, and that will be celebrated in the Catholic Church on Good Friday. That was one of the relics, as well as relics from St. Genevieve and St. Denis, 2 very important saints in the French Catholic Church.
A live picture of Notre Dame, the fire continuing to burn at the center of it, but clearly not at the level we had seen for the better part of an hour, as a heavy billow of smoke, a plume, rose up and across the city of Paris. We have seen pictures of the ground of people just standing there witnessing this with a sense of disbelief and sadness. And I think the French president spoke so well when he said it took a part of it's a part of Paris, it's a part of France that they are losing tonight. Such a part of this city's identity. A city that's known a fair amount of tragedy. I noted earlier I had been there a few years back for the series of terror attacks, the Bataclan Theater, the target of that. There was, before that, the Charlie Hebdo terror attack. So it is a city that has known its fair share of tragedy and heartbreak over the last several years. Annalise Bourget from our partners Euronews is on the phone right now. Annalise, what can you tell us? Does it appear they're making progress?
Well, not exactly. We have seen over the last hour or so the roof of the cathedral virtually collapse in its entirety. I don't think there's anything left of the roof, at least from where I stand. I cannot see any single part of the roof. What I can see from here is that the flames are intensifying once again. Over the last 30 minutes or so, it started to burn once again from inside the church. The efforts of firefighters, and there are quite a few of them, of course, that have been deployed to the scene, seems to be in vain so far. And it is quite heartbreaking to see, not only from where I stand, but also from, of course, the perspective of the residents and the tourists alike. I have thousands of people around me right now who have been here standing in shock, watching as this monument, this very important and iconic symbol of the city, but of this entire country, burns right in front of their eyes.
Annalise, have you heard any indications or any word of potential injuries in this?
No, so far we have not have any reports of injured people. I spoke to a resident that lives nearby. She was quite concerned about her family, but so far authorities have not reported any injuries. We do understand that tourists were evacuated from the church quite quickly in the first signs of fire, and I spoke to a few tourists who were inside the church as the fire started, and they said the authorities were indeed very, very fast. But of course, we have yet to get a full report of just why this happened in the first place, and just what is the cause of this fire, and exactly how this has come to happen. We do understand that this church was under renovation, and there are some local channels here in France that have been reporting that this fire may have started as a consequence, as an accident within that process, that renovation work. But once again, no confirmation of the cause of the fire, nor if there are any injured.
Annalise, thank you. The roof gone there as the flames now continue to pour from the upper section of Notre Dame as nightfall is upon Paris. And on that note about the potential cause, we've received word that the Paris prosecutor's office has opened an official investigation to determine the cause of this fire, even as firefighters continue to suppress those flames. Let me go to Sarah Harmon right now. She's monitoring all this from our London newsroom, where we're taking in the bulk of our information. Sarah, what more can you tell us?
Hey, Lester. Well, our producer on the ground is saying, as you said, that the Paris prosecutor is opening an investigation, but also that prosecutor is at the scene along with the French president, looking into the cause of the blaze. As we heard from Annalise, the fire continues to burn, and a key focus is going to be on that scaffolding. What role, if any, that played. We also know that first responders are trying desperately to salvage the art and the relics and the priceless pieces that were inside of Notre Dame. We also had earlier a cathedral spokesman saying this wooden interior in Notre Dame is burning. That is not a good sign when you think about the priceless pieces of art that are stored inside this building, that the fire has now reached that level, according to this cathedral spokesman. Lester. All
right, Sarah, thank you very much. It took roughly 200 years to complete this cathedral, and even as we look at this immense destruction, when you look at the history of this place, you do get the sense of comfort. It'll be back.
You do. I mean, this is such an important structure to the people of Paris that it is not something that they are just going to let burn and diminish. It is as much a symbol of Paris as the Eiffel Tower, and it is a spiritual symbol of Paris. And a spiritual symbol to the world. You know, Annalise was talking about how the fire seemed to be getting more intense. That may be because of that wooden interior, which is now fueling the flames. But it is stunning when you think so far that we have no injuries here. 30,000 people a day, Lester, go through this cathedral on very busy weeks. And this would have been one of them because it's Holy Week in the Catholic Church, where we will have Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and then, of course, Easter Sunday, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. At the end, you could get up to 50,000 people through that cathedral on a day like this.
And I have seen long lines here before to go up in the tower.
Uh-huh.
And again, given the closing time and what we know about when this fire, thank goodness that tower should have been empty of people.
And that is, if there is a blessing in all of that, all of this, it would be that. But this scene is something like I don't think anyone in Paris has ever or could even imagine, even despite the history where this church has been a target, particularly during the French Revolution. But it is such a piece of the skyline of Paris, part of that city, that no one would ever think this could happen.
Yeah, you look to your left, and I think it's to your left. There's the Eiffel Tower, and then of course Notre Dame. As you got the other two places that the people that tend to want to go first on their trips to Paris. An amazing place, an amazingly difficult firefighting effort too, as well as I've witnessed over the years of urban firefighting challenges. This appears to be a significant one here, given the roof has now given way, some of the interior walls themselves.
Right, and if people haven't been to Paris, what you may not know is that Notre Dame is actually on an island. There are these two little islands in the city of Paris, in the middle of the Seine, and Notre Dame, is on one of them, and that just makes it all the more difficult. But talking to eyewitnesses today, they say what first people were shocked. They didn't quite understand what was going on. They were taking pictures, and now there's just kind of a stunned silence watching the destruction of this building.
So awful to see. Ann, thank you very much. Our Richard Engel will have a live report from Paris when I see you in a little while for NBC Nightly News. We'll have continuing coverage on NBC News, our NBC News app. For now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News, New York. Good day.
You could hear the gasps, and this is one of the most iconic places anywhere in Europe. I think as we watch nightfall, that if you look at any guidebook of Paris, they tell you, look at the Eiffel Tower at night and look at Notre Dame at night, and people walk along the Seine, and it is an awe-inspiring sight on any night. Tonight, it is a gut punch. Hello, I am Chris Jansing in for Ali Velshi, and we continue our coverage of this breaking news from Paris, an absolutely devastating fire at the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral just days before Easter. The cathedral spokesperson told reporters the whole frame of the cathedral is burning. The entire interior wooden structure is likely to be destroyed. Notre Dame is, of course, not just an important place of worship. It is the seat of the Archbishop in Paris. It is one of the world's most famous tourist attractions, the most visited place in Paris because of its architecture and invaluable works of art, which even as we speak, first responders are trying to save from inside that building. The cathedral, you could see, if you saw some of the earlier pictures, all the scaffolding, it was under renovation. It's not yet clear just how the fire started near the spire. And then just about an hour ago, part of that famous spire, as Stephanie said, collapsed.
Oh my God, this people just fell inside the church.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
It just fully collapsed to the inside of the church. On the church, there's the part that people have probably seen before with the big rose in the middle and the two towers. And then there's the part of the church, and there's a large steeple in the back, and that was where the fire seems to have originated.
And joining us now is an eyewitness, Gina Natale, who is near the cathedral right now. Gina, are you in a state of shock?
Yes, I think everyone is in a state of shock. We're just visiting, my friend and I, from Chicago, and we were within blocks of the cathedral just before it happened. And, it was like any other day. And then we started receiving, we didn't actually, see it, the smoke ourselves at first, and we started receiving lots and lots of text messages from friends back home. And when we got back to our apartment, we could see the skyline filled with smoke, big plumes of dark gray smoke coming off of the cathedral. So quite devastating.
Are you still in the apartment now, and what can you see?
We are in the apartment now. There's no more smoke in the sky, so we can't see very much. But right about 15 minutes after it was set on fire, we saw the plumes went from the cathedral all the way across the skyline, even over the Eiffel Tower, which, if you're not familiar, that's quite far on the other side of the city. So very high, dark gray, very big. And we could also see plumes when the fire fell. We could see new plumes forming and coming up. It was quite shocking.
When you realized that it was Notre Dame that was on fire, did you leave the apartment? Did you try to go near it? I just wonder sort of what the reaction on the street was, if you saw or spoke to anyone.
So we didn't see or speak to anyone. We have a view from a top floor, so we wanted to see it from above. That was our sort of best vantage point. But we could hear a lot of sirens. We're in what is normally, the past few days we've been here, a very quiet neighborhood, and just all we could hear was sirens starting, and lots of them.
Had you had a chance to go inside Notre Dame this visit?
Oh, I have to tell you, I'm so sad. We visited the outside of it yesterday, and we made it a point to, we're going to come back to it in a few days. We didn't have time yesterday to go inside, and of course we took for granted it would still be there.
Yeah, it's hard to describe to people, even that you didn't get to go inside, but I was just mentioning moments ago, wherever you're walking around that part of the Seine, whenever you are in that area, you are drawn to the cathedral. It is an awe-inspiring sight, is it not?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's an iconic monument to both, obviously, religion and architecture, and we feel so awful for the people of Paris and the people of France.
Are you feeling now as though everything's okay? You said that the smoke had stopped. Is there smoke in your building? How far away exactly are you?
So we're in the 17th arrondissement. So we're the northwest of where the Notre Dame is, and we're safe. We're far enough away that we're safe. But there was a good hour of smoke coming from the building because we got home just as probably 10 minutes after the fire started, and so we saw the smoke basically from when it started to when it dissipated.
Well, Gina Natale, we thank you so much thank you so much for your time, and appreciate that you had a chance to talk to us. We do have a team of reporters and experts to help us understand the enormous significance of these moments. NBC News' Sarah Harmon is joining us, and art historian Elizabeth Lev, who is based in Rome but spends a lot of time in Paris, including a lot of last summer. Sarah, I want to bring you in first. Get us up to date. What do we know? What happened here?
Hey, Chris, well, the absolute latest is we now have eyewitnesses saying that this massive fire has spread to one of Notre Dame's iconic rectangular towers. Now, NBC has not been able to independently confirm this yet, but our bureau is across the story. We're trying to bring you the very latest. This has been devastating. We saw the spire collapse earlier. A French writer and historian, Camille Pascal, saying that this is the destruction of invaluable heritage. We're horrified by what we see. We also do have the first bit of good news, Chris, out of Paris. We've learned that 16 religious statues were actually removed for the peak for the first time in a century because they were being cleaned, and therefore they escaped the fire. The latest information that we have is that emergency responders are now trying desperately to move some of the very valuable artwork and relics out of Notre Dame to try and save it from the blaze and from the smoke. Right now, we do not have any reports of deaths, which is pretty incredible when you think about the scale of this blaze in an urban area. The Paris prosecutor has opened an investigation, and a key focus of that investigation is likely to be this ongoing renovation that you mentioned and the scaffolding that was outside part of the exterior. Right now, based on what we know, it does appear the fire is still burning about 2 hours after it began. That's the latest we have for you, Chris.
Sarah, stay with us if you will. I want to go to Liz Lev, who many of you know from our coverage often out of Rome. But Liz, I know you've spent quite a bit of time in Notre Dame. You are an art historian. And you just heard Sarah talk about the fact that there are first responders who are going in trying to save what they can. Explain to us in terms of the art world what's at stake here.
Well, I think in this day where we're all sort of mourning together, one of the first things that comes to mind is this is one of the reasons why I became an art historian. This church is a mixture of human ingenuity, problem solving, and then at the same time a vision of transcendence. And every single thing about that church is a work of art. So already with these extraordinary design that was really an innovation for the very first time. We have the first flying buttresses, for example, in Notre Dame. The first time they could open up walls by supporting them on the outside, making that beautiful tendril effect that people love to see. As a matter of fact, you've been watching the smoke billowing around those tendrils. In the interior of that church, despite revolutions, despite being emptied out to become a temple of reason during the course of the French Revolution, that church has maintained a great many beautiful artistic treasures, everything from its choir, where the kings of France would sit with this very elaborate 15th century stories of Christ all the way around it. You have an exceptionally beautiful statue given by Louis XIII and then later his son of these offering up their crowns and their glory to the Virgin. You have many statues of the Blessed Virgin. You have these magnificent paintings called Les Mai, these paintings that the city of Paris would give to the cathedral once a year. So I mean, it really is an invaluable series of treasures that are contained in there.
And so much history that happened there as well, Liz. I mean, Henry VI was crowned there, Mary Stuart. I think in 1804, Napoleon got the Pope there because he wanted him to crown him, and then I think Napoleon ended up crowning himself. But the amount of history that has happened in that building is extraordinary.
I mean, this building was begun in 1163. Everything from its construction, the achievements in the construction. It started out in one style, and as they were building in the Romanesque style, they developed this brand new Gothic style with these new ideas. And so you have the incredible steps forward, the strides forward in design. Then you move into the historical wealth. This was the church of the weddings of the kings of France. There are 3 churches in France that were used for royalty. One was for funerals, so that was the Saint-Denis. One was for coronations, that was Reims. And it was Notre Dame that was used for these exceptional weddings. You also have, of course, as you said, the famous coronation of Napoleon on December 4th in 1804. This incredible parade, which we have many beautiful paintings, which culminated in Napoleon taking the crown out of the hands of the Pope. But it's also seen destruction, and I think this is a good thing for us to remember that while it's never seen the devastation that it's experiencing today, that church it saw its statues beheaded and its stained glass broken. It saw the church emptied. It saw the church shot through at the end of World War II, and yet that church has always come back. It has always renewed itself. It's always revived. And I believe that this church, this time, Notre Dame, will revive once again.
Stay with us, if you will, Liz. The U.S. Conference of Bishops here in Washington has issued a statement. The horrific fire that is engulfing the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris is shocking and saddens us all. For this particular cathedral is not only a majestic church, it is also a world treasure. Noble in architecture and art, it has long been a symbol of the transcendent human spirit, as well as our longing for God. Our hearts go out to the Archbishop and the people of Paris, and we pray for all the people of France, entrusting all to the prayers and intercession of the Mother of God, especially the firefighters battling the fire.
We are a people of hope and of the resurrection. And as devastating as this fire is, I know that the faith and love embodied by this magnificent cathedral will go stronger in the hearts of all Christians. And Ann Thompson joins us as well. And they use the use of the word resurrection. Easter is coming up. It is the most important holy day on the Catholic calendar. There would be events there all week long. The Mass on Easter would be not something you think of when you think of church, a hot ticket.
It would be standing room only, without any doubt, Chris. And this is certainly one of the busiest weeks of the year, I'm sure, for the Notre Dame Cathedral. Usually they have 30,000 people a day go through there. On their really busy weeks, it could be as high as 50,000. So that gives you an kind of idea of what kind of magnet it is. The USCCB's statement called Notre Dame a world treasure, and indeed it is. And in fact, when you were reading that statement, we could see, you know, they have those dinner boats that go up and down the Seine, and going past Notre Dame is a very important part of that tour at night. And then to see it this way is just absolutely unbelievable, and especially during during Holy Week. I mean, think of what would have been there Holy Thursday, reenacting the Last Supper, where the Archbishop would wash the feet of 12 people to represent the apostles, the silence of Good Friday, when we remember the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and then, of course, the joy of Easter Sunday. All of that is now gone, to say nothing of what this means, not just to Catholics, but to Christians and to the people of Paris in general. It is as much a symbol of Paris, the Cathedral of Notre Dame, as the Eiffel Tower.
Sarah, I was remembering that when I was in Paris for quite a while after the horrific Bataclan attacks, one of the things that the people of Paris told me so repeatedly was they hoped that this would not keep people away. Whatever their political thoughts may be, however they felt about what was going on in France in general, the pride in the beauty of their city, of places like Notre Dame, that it has long been such a magnet for people, and the awe-inspiring nature of this, another horrific heartbreak for the city of Paris.
Yes, and we know that 400 firefighters are on the scene attempting to put out this blaze. This is one of Paris's most iconic monuments. More people visit Notre Dame than the Eiffel Tower, for example. It's in many ways synonymous with the city, and to watch it burn over the last several hours is a real gut punch, not just for Paris, but for anyone who loves art or history. This is devastating and historic. There's going to be an investigation. We know the Paris prosecutor has opened an investigation and is now on the scene of this burning cathedral. One of the focuses is likely to be the renovation work that was going on. This cathedral was undergoing a $6.8 million renovation at the time the fire broke out. There was scaffolding on the exterior, and it's very likely that that's where they'll start looking. What caused this blaze? But first, they have to put it out. And based on the information we have right now, this fire is still burning, and this is very much an active situation in Paris right now.
And with me now is the former director of FEMA and former Miami-Dade County Fire Chief, David Paulison, who is an expert in fighting fires in historic buildings. So let me just ask you first the immediate question, which is the challenges that are facing firefighters right now.
You know, I can't even imagine what's going through these firefighters' brain right now with this beautiful building, a 1,000-year-old building, took 300 years to build, and the fact that they're being tasked with saving what's left of this building. You know, Paris has a great fire department, very good firefighters. So I know they're doing everything they could possibly do. I also appreciate the fact that we just heard that they're also going in and taking out as many of those paintings and historic